The most expensive combat aircraft ever built flew a strike mission over the Middle East and returned without destroying a single intended target. The pilots were not intercepted. The aircraft were not damaged. The weapons functioned exactly as designed. The problem was that every coordinate those weapons tracked had been quietly, invisibly, and systematically replaced with a lie before they were released. Israel's F-35s flew into an active war zone navigating false terrain. Their precision-guided munitions followed coordinates that Iran had constructed, and the ordnance that $400 billion in American aerospace investment was designed to deliver with surgical accuracy struck empty ground, while Iranian electronic warfare teams watched the strike packages execute with perfect fidelity against targets that did not exist. The governments in Tel Aviv and Washington understand what happened. The mission debrief data is not ambiguous. What is ambiguous is the official characterization of it, because the full account of what Iran demonstrated that night carries implications that extend far beyond one aborted Israeli strike package. Subscribe to From Report right now and turn on notifications, because what follows is the analysis of a capability demonstration that every serious defense ministry on Earth is currently processing inside closed rooms, and that the public briefings from every government involved are structurally motivated to understate. Before anything else can be assessed accurately, the distinction between what Iran executed and what most reporting has described as jamming needs to be made with precision, because the difference is not semantic. It is the difference between a warning and a weapon. Jamming is the cruder of the two capabilities. Flood the GPS frequency with broadband noise. Alert the aircraft's receiver. Force emergency protocols. The pilot immediately knows something is wrong. Navigation degrades visibly. The system flags the anomaly. The mission is aborted with full awareness that signal denial is occurring. Jamming is detectable, expected, and planned for in the operational doctrine of every advanced air force. Iran did not jam Israel's F-35s. Iran spoofed them. Spoofing means injecting false GPS signals into the receiver with a fidelity high enough that nothing aboard the aircraft registers abnormality. The navigation suite reads clean. The weapons computers calculate cleanly. The mission management system sees no alerts, no warnings, no indication of compromise. The pilot has every reason to believe his aircraft is exactly where his instruments say it is. What he cannot know is that every coordinate his aircraft is processing has been silently replaced with a carefully constructed alternative reality. The aircraft operates normally. The weapons release normally. The pilot executes the mission normally. The bombs land exactly where the navigation system said to drop them. The navigation system was lying. And no alarm told anyone it was lying until the impact data came back and the targets were intact. The physical architecture of the operation Iran executed is the component that the defense procurement community finds most difficult to process, because it requires confronting a decade of comfortable institutional assumption. Iranian electronic warfare teams deployed a distributed network of mobile spoofing transmitters across western Iran, eastern Syria, and the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. These platforms did not operate from fixed positions that Israeli electronic warfare suppression could locate and destroy. They were mobile, distributed, redundant, and coordinated, creating an overlapping zone of corrupted GPS coverage that extended deep into the operational airspace where Israeli F-35s were conducting strike missions. The network did not need to attack anything. It did not need to overpower military GPS signals with brute force. It needed only to inject false coordinates into receiver architecture with sufficient precision that the authentication protocols embedded in military GPS systems accepted them as genuine. That is a software and signal engineering problem. It is not a manufacturing problem. It does not require access to Western microelectronics or Western supply chains. It requires deep knowledge of what military GPS receivers are programmed to trust, and Iran acquired that knowledge in 2011 in a way that no threat assessment at the time fully processed. The RQ-170 Sentinel episode is where the current operational capability traces its origins, and examining it carefully explains how a nation under comprehensive sanctions developed the technical foundation for what it executed against Israeli F-35 navigation systems. In late 2011, an American RQ-170 reconnaissance drone landed nearly intact inside Iranian territory. The United States initially described the loss as a malfunction. The Iranian account was different, and as subsequent technical analysis confirmed, more accurate. Iranian engineers had executed a GPS spoofing operation against the drone's navigation system, feeding it false coordinates that convinced its autopilot it was approaching its home base in Afghanistan. The drone navigated itself smoothly and precisely into Iranian hands, while American operators watching the telemetry could not understand why the aircraft was not responding. That single event mattered, not because of the aircraft itself, but because of what it gave Iranian reverse engineering teams direct access to: American GPS receiver architecture. The signal processing logic used in military systems. The authentication thresholds that determine what signals military receivers accept as genuine. The precise fidelity levels at which military GPS authentication protocols make their trust decisions. What Iranian engineers learned from that drone became the technical foundation for everything that followed. The specificity of what they captured, not a commercial receiver but an active military system whose authentication architecture was designed to resist exactly the threat Iran was studying, compressed years of theoretical research into operational knowledge. Over the decade that followed, the IRGC's Electronic Warfare Command developed what defense analysts are now describing as a layered GPS denial architecture that is mobile, distributed, redundant, and precisely engineered against the authentication protocols embedded in American and Israeli military GPS receivers. The trajectory of development was not linear. It included the GPS denial operations Iranian-aligned forces conducted against American military assets in Iraq and Syria in the years after the drone capture. It included tests against commercial GPS receivers in the Persian Gulf that maritime safety organizations documented on multiple occasions. It included the iterative refinement that comes from operating in environments where American electronic warfare assets are present and observable. And it included the strategic patience of an adversary that understood it was building toward a specific operational moment, the moment when Israel's F-35 dependency on GPS-guided precision delivery would become exploitable in a live combat environment. That moment arrived. The capability was ready. The Iranian navigating and targeting systems used Russian GLONASS and Chinese Beidou satellite positioning, which operate on different frequencies from GPS and were entirely unaffected by the spoofing network. While Israeli F-35s flew through a bubble of constructed false coordinates, Iranian ground systems and any Iranian aircraft operating in the same zone saw the operational picture with full accuracy. The asymmetry that Iran had spent a decade building was operational. Iran was seeing clearly, while Israel was navigating by lies. The consequences for Israel's immediate military position are neither temporary nor easily reversed. Israel's entire warfare doctrine rests on one foundational requirement that its geography makes non-negotiable: speed. A nation of 9 million people surrounded by adversaries on multiple borders, with no strategic depth and a concentrated civilian population, cannot fight attritional wars. Every conflict must end quickly, decisively, and on terms that restore deterrence before the next round begins. The instrument that makes this possible is air power. The Israeli Air Force is not simply a military branch. It is the mechanism by which a small nation projects force across a region, suppresses adversary rocket and missile infrastructure before it can deliver mass casualties, and maintains the credibility of deterrence that prevents multiple simultaneous adversary escalations. For that mechanism to function, Israeli aircraft must strike with confidence. When pilots cannot fully trust their navigation, when mission commanders cannot trust their debrief data, when the morning briefing cannot confirm that the targets designated for destruction have been destroyed, the rapid, decisive warfare architecture that has protected Israel for 7 decades begins to fracture. Iran did not degrade Israeli air power in the conventional sense of destroying aircraft or attriting sortie rates through defensive systems. Iran attacked the confidence that Israeli air power requires to function as a deterrent. That is a categorically different and more difficult degradation to reverse. The emergency response inside Israeli Air Command was immediate. Anti-jam receiver upgrades were accelerated. Alternative navigation protocols using inertial reference systems and terrain reference positioning were pushed to operational squadrons. Some of this restores partial effectiveness in a compressed timeline. But partial is not full, and the Israeli Air Force now carries operational knowledge that its GPS dependency is exploitable by an adversary that has demonstrated the technical sophistication to exploit it at scale in a live combat environment. Every mission profile that relies on GPS-guided precision delivery now requires reassessment against the backdrop of that demonstrated vulnerability. Every strike package that uses GPS waypoint navigation needs alternative protocols validated in contested electronic environments. This rethinking does not complete in days. Hezbollah in Lebanon is not pausing for this rethinking to complete. Iranian-supplied precision missiles continue reaching Israeli territory. Those weapons are inertially guided and terrain referenced, specifically because Iranian weapons designers anticipated navigation warfare and built their export weapons to function inside exactly this kind of GPS-denied environment. Israel is absorbing fire from weapons that do not depend on GPS, while its primary response instrument is operating with reduced confidence because of GPS compromise. That operational arrangement is not an accident of circumstance. It is the product of a strategy that Iran has been building toward for 15 years, in deliberate coordination with the weapons it supplies to its allies. The question that defense ministries in every nation that has purchased American fifth-generation aircraft are processing in closed sessions is the one that moves this beyond a regional story. Japan, South Korea, Poland, the UAE, Australia. Governments that made procurement decisions worth tens of billions of dollars on the premise that F-35 performance in contested airspace would provide the deterrence those funds were intended to purchase, are now in possession of a live operational data point showing that a sanctioned nation with a strong engineering culture can deny GPS to those aircraft in ways that aircraft systems do not detect until ordnance impact data contradicts mission planning coordinates. The question those governments are asking is not whether Iran can do this. Iran just demonstrated that it can. The question is what Russia can do, what China can do. Russia's electronic warfare investment has been systematically tested in Ukraine, where GPS degradation against Ukrainian precision weapons has been documented at operational scale. China's electronic warfare program is assessed as more sophisticated than Iran's and has been sustained at a funding level that Iran could not approach. North Korea has demonstrated GPS disruption affecting civilian aviation in South Korea on multiple occasions. The answer to the question of which adversaries can execute GPS denial operations against American military technology includes multiple state actors across multiple theaters with capabilities that vary in sophistication but share a directional trajectory of improvement. Reports indicate that the Pentagon's institutional response has followed the pattern that sensitive operational vulnerabilities consistently produce: acknowledgement through classified channels, silence in public, and management of the disclosure timeline to minimize the market and alliance consequences of a public admission. The silence is analytically understandable even where it is strategically problematic. Public acknowledgement that Iran has demonstrated GPS spoofing capability sufficient to disrupt F-35 strike operations in a live combat environment forces every government that purchased American fifth-generation aircraft to formally reassess the operational guarantees that underpinned those procurement decisions. The international market for American military technology is not insulated from the consequences of a demonstrated capability gap between what the technology was marketed to provide and what it delivered in the operational environment that was always its intended context. Gulf states are recalculating. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar have built significant defense capacity around American platforms and American technological assurances. The Iranian demonstration is forcing senior military planners in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi to assess whether those investments provide the operational guarantee that was implicit when the procurements were made. Here is where the picture stands based on what the operational record shows. Israel's F-35s flew strike missions in an active war zone and released precision-guided munitions that struck empty terrain because Iran had spoofed the GPS coordinates those munitions tracked. Iranian electronic warfare teams operated a distributed mobile network of spoofing transmitters across a geographic zone covering western Iran, eastern Syria, and the Bekaa Valley. Iranian systems navigated using GLONASS and Beidou throughout the operation with full accuracy. Israeli Air Command ordered mission stand-down after impact data revealed the GPS compromise. Emergency anti-jam and alternative navigation protocols are being accelerated. The technical foundation for this operation traces directly to the 2011 RQ-170 capture and the decade of development that followed. And the governments most directly affected, Israel, the United States, and every nation that has purchased American fifth-generation aircraft, are managing public disclosure in ways that make accurate public analysis of what happened significantly harder to find than classified briefings to closed-room audiences. Subscribe to From Report and turn on notifications. When the anti-jam upgrade program produces operational results that Israeli Air Command is prepared to test against Iranian GPS denial in a live environment, the analysis will be here. When the procurement consequences for American defense exports produce formal requests for capability guarantees from allied governments that purchased F-35s, the analysis will be here. When the public characterization of what happened that night over Iranian airspace is forced into accuracy by the documentary record, the analysis will be here. Evidence first, analysis second. What it means for you, always.